Welcome to Adding Fuel to the Hire, a podcast for hiring managers and job seekers across all types of dealerships. With over 20 years collective recruitment experience, Rowan, Tony and Phil draw upon their knowledge to help you navigate through the recruitment and job hunt process. For more information, head to our website, addingfueltothehire.com.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Adding Fuel to the Hire. I'm Tony Flynn and today I have Phil with me. How are you, Phil?
Good. How are you going?
Not too bad. So today's topic's probably going to be a long one. It covers off on a couple of different sub-issues that we've spoken about before, but I think this is how it's going to encompass all of it all together in the one episode. It's finding the right candidate. Yeah. So you can imagine there's a lot of different things we need to talk about, and we're definitely not going to cover it all by any means today, but hopefully we're going to go through the important stuff. And I suppose what we've found in our time in recruitment as being the pillars of success in this area, whether or not you can find the right candidate and why it's important. So first and foremost, for anyone listening, finding the right candidate is just so important for the culture of your business. Yeah. I've heard this saying for many years, and it's so true. I've seen it firsthand where a bad cultural fit is like a cancer for your business. It can just eat away over time and I suppose corrupt good employees in a way and turn good employees into bad ones. So getting that right person is just pivotal with every single hire that you do. But yeah, it's just culturally, it's so important.
Yeah, you got to think about how they're going to actually fit in the team once they start. You want to get a candidate who's going to complement the rest of the team, who's going to be on the same wavelength. At the end of the day, they're going to have to work together day in, day out for the majority of the day. A lot of the time, I've said it before, you probably spend more time at work than you do with your family. So work often becomes like a little family. So you got to make sure everyone, you don't need everyone to be best friends, but you want everyone to get along and be able to work together really well. The other thing I think you should probably think about is what does it tell your team when you're hiring someone? A specific hire can point the team into a direction of, oh, okay, so this is where they want to go with this. Yeah. Do I even want to be a part of that? That's probably not really what I was looking for, what I was thinking we're going to be doing. So think about how it's going to impact them and what it tells the team as well.
Particularly in leadership positions, that's something you really need to be really conscious of. That leader that you bring in, particularly if they have a specific background or history, it can show or dictate a lot of what's going to come to their subordinates or the other members of the team. So yeah, it does send a very clear message to people. This is what we're aiming to do. This is where we want to go. So yeah, that's really important and often overlooked. And I think with cultural fit, it's important to recognize that doesn't mean just hiring 10 people with the exact same opinions, the exact same interests in the hope they all get along. It's, I suppose, understanding what you need culturally at that time and filling that gap. Yeah. You might need someone completely different to the 8 members already in your team because they're going to have a different way of thinking. But that's still a cultural fit because it's fitting cultural need at the time. So I think historically a lot of companies just focused on, well, we just want 10 Phils. Phil's worked good for us. We want 10 of him. Yeah. But that's not necessarily the case because people will butt heads and
that's right, yeah. And if you've got 10 of the same, you're just going to come up with the same solution every single time to the problem. You want something, you want a good mix in there. It's tricky, we love talking about, you got to get culture right. But it's not that easy to do. No. Because you've got to really think about what have I got? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? Who do they work best with? And how can I find someone who will complement their weaknesses, essentially?
Yeah, exactly. It's by far the hardest part of everything. And if it was easy, we probably wouldn't be in business because people wouldn't have turnover. And that kind of segues us into our next point really well is the hidden costs of getting this wrong. Yes. There's the obvious costs that everyone's well aware of when they recruit. They go, it's cost us X amount because of our recruitment fees that we outsourced or our advertising costs or our labor costs for our internal recruiters to do it. They're the obvious ones, but there's a lot of hidden costs as well, training, the fact that you're not going to get the best out of that employee for potentially 6, 12, 18 months, depending on the type of role. So your output for them or your return for them is not going to be as good. So there's so many hidden costs to getting this wrong. Yeah.
Think about the time the hiring manager spends on interviewing this person, the obvious recruiting bit to offering them the job, but also the time they're going to have to spend training them in the first few weeks. Depending on the role, there's going to be a certain return on investment that you're going to be looking at. You want to say, okay, this person's going to need to work this and this and this, and need to hit these and these and these numbers before their salary is, for us, is a good investment for us.
Yeah.
We're getting more money out of them than we're putting into them, so to speak. And if you choose the wrong person, they might never hit that. And then it's 4 or 5 months have gone by and you go, all right, look, sorry. You get to that 6 month, the end of that 6 month probation, you say, look, not going to work out. Sorry. You've just spent 6 months of your hiring manager's time, so the direct line manager, so to speak, your team's time, because a lot of the time the team helps them, integrate into the day-to-day as well.
Yep.
Your manager will say, all right, look, this is what we want you to do. These are the things you should probably be doing on a day-to-day basis. And then the team will be like, okay, on the ground, this is what it actually looks like. So you've got that, as you said, all the advertising costs and that sort of thing, and you've just wasted 6 months. Spending time on a candidate that wasn't going to be a good fit.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot to take in and think about, and we're not saying it's easy by any means. It's not easy,
no.
and you're gonna no matter what you do, no matter how great your process is, you're still going to have people slip through the cracks. But understanding these points will minimize those, I suppose. And if you can minimize at least one, then you've saved yourself a lot of time and money. So the first step really to finding the right candidate is understanding the market rates. It's where everything starts. If you're advertising a role and you don't know what the market rates are and where you sit in that, then you're already fighting a losing battle. Purely and simply because you don't know what you need to pay to get a high caliber candidate. You don't know, well, if we are under market rates and there's just nothing we can do about it, we need to be wary of that and manage the types of people that are going to come through accordingly. It does change your psyche throughout the recruitment process. So the first thing is obviously the saying, pay peanuts, get monkeys. So if you can, you need to understand the market rate so that you're paying above them to entice the good employees, particularly from your competitors, to jump ship and come over. Yeah,
that's right. And look, that doesn't mean you have to pay 20, 30, 40 grand more than everyone else.
No.
It just means you need to be within that ballpark figure of what everyone else is offering, and then put your own twist on the role in terms of these are the sort of incentives we can offer you.
Exactly.
This is maybe you've got a great brand you're working with, or you've got great salary sacrifice options, or there's a vehicle involved or something like that. So there's lots of different things there that you can do, even if you have an average salary.
Yeah, exactly. Think outside the box. How can we, and that goes towards everything throughout recruitment. Every step you do, you need to think, well, how can we make this as appealing as possible to the largest number of people that we want to target? And if you have that in the back of your mind, then you'll go, well, if you think, how people thought 10, 20 years ago that, there's plenty of fish in the sea, we don't need them, they need us. Well, that's when you're going to struggle a lot when you're finding the right candidate. But I suppose it's easy for us because we're in it, I suppose, all the time, understanding market rates. But where do you start if you're a company and you don't understand market rates, you don't know where you stand with it all? Yeah,
it's tough, especially if you just, you can't really go to a competitor and go across the road and go, hey, just wanted to know how much are you guys paying your staff? You can't do that. So the first thing you can do is obviously research on the internet. A lot of job boards will obviously show salaries. The other thing you can do is you can click on the specific job you're trying to research, and some of the job boards will have an average range on the site there. The other thing you can do is contact recruiters. So if there's a specialist recruiter in the industry, contact them. They'll be happy to. They generally won't charge. They'll be happy to just be your sounding board for the market and just give you an idea of this is generally what you're seeing in regional areas. This is what you're seeing in metro areas. These are the roles we've generally worked on, and this is sort of the range. If you can't find someone like that, contact a few recruitment agencies and just get a few ballpark figures. Be careful, obviously. You want to do a few to get a good idea. Sometimes people tend to push those up a little bit when you're not working, particularly when you're not working with a specialist. When you're working with a generalist recruiter, they tend to say, oh yeah, it's 10 or 15 grand more than what they've actually had.
Yeah, I would go as far to say if you can't get a specialist, I wouldn't even try to do it because they will just pull numbers out of somewhere.
the numbers definitely get pushed up.
Yeah, because we've done it plenty of times for clients in the past where we'll actually just export the data from our placements for that type of position or those locations, and we can put a report together in all of 30 seconds with actual working numbers. So most recruiters that are specialised will be happy to do that for free.
Yeah.
It doesn't take long. It's very easy.
It's not hard. And if they tell you it's hard, then they don't want to tell you.
Yeah, exactly right. It is not hard at all. And then the other thing that a lot of people often, I suppose, don't think about, because it is tough, it's when someone resigns at your company. It's so easy to put the walls up and just almost be, I suppose, negative towards them. Just human nature. They're leaving you. You feel, like they've left you or cheated on, kind of thing. But have a transparent conversation with them, and you might not get all the information you want, but if you have that relationship with your staff, you can sit down and say, Phil, we're really sorry to let you go, and we understand there's nothing we can do, but just to help us in the future and help, your ex-colleagues or now ex-colleagues, do you mind us asking, what have they offered you? How much are you going to be on compared to what you are now? What were the factors that led you to wanting to leave?
That's right.
Just exit interviews are so important because they can give you that sense of, well, this is what we've done wrong. It sucks to hear.
Yeah.
It is by far the worst and hardest thing to do to have an employee. And it's not always going to be good information because you can get people that will just want to complain.
Yeah.
So it's picking the right information, but starting with objective information about salaries and those sorts of things is a really good and easy way to get important information out of people.
That's right. And plus, at that point, they've obviously resigned, they've left. So you're probably going to get a good amount of honesty out of them.
Yeah,
that you
exactly.
Might not get. Yeah, you might not get out of current employees because they don't want to offend you or they don't want to,
rock the boat.
Yeah, they don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to say something bad to your employer sometimes. So it's a good opportunity to just get some honest feedback and tell them, look, this has absolutely no bearing on how we remember you or, how we talk about you in the future. We honestly just want to know what were the factors that led you to leaving and how can we do better to stop it from happening the next time around for your now ex-employees.
Yeah, exactly right.
Chances are, whatever your issues were or whatever your complaints were, they're probably complaints from other employees as well.
Exactly. So, yep. Then it's never just one person.
No.
The next point, and this could probably be an episode all on its own. It has the potential to go down a rabbit hole here. But it's the attitude versus aptitude debate.
Yeah.
We see it all the time. We might interview a candidate that just doesn't fit the bill perfectly, but they just have the best attitude. It's something innate about them, completely intangible. It's a gut feel. You just know.
Yeah, it's that human connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Traditionally, it happens a lot with service advisors, salespeople. The human faces of your business is probably where we see it the most. But yeah, attitude versus aptitude. Won't lead anything in. What's your opinion?
Yeah. A bit of both. I always find the recruitment process is a bit like a game of poker. You slowly reveal the cards on the table, and as those cards are revealed, the that good feeling in your stomach comes out when they match your cards, essentially. And that's what that attitude is all about, I think. You're feeling like this person's on the same wavelength as me. We're really getting along. They're clearly wanting to invest in this company. Rah, rah, rah. There's a million different factors, obviously. In terms of actual ability, it's obviously important. You probably want to, if you've got a big team of 20 people and it's a big management role, they can have the best attitude in the world. If they've got no management experience at all, you probably don't want to put them on for this role.
Exactly.
But take for example, someone wants to switch industries within the dealership industry. Let's use it as an example, from a car dealership to a truck dealership. They're a service advisor at a car dealership, and you just get that feeling of, okay, they don't know much about trucks, but they really want to give this a go and they really want to make this work.
Yeah, and you've placed someone recently that kind of fits this bill perfectly. I remember you getting off the phone to him, and it was just he will get the job.
Yeah, I said it straight away. He was the one guy I interviewed, and I said okay, let's put it this way, he should get the job. Yeah, he's the one that should get the job,
and had no truck experience.
At all, but worked out really well. Yeah, so I've had that a few times where they've had somewhat related experience, but it didn't really fit the bill of what the client was looking for. Yeah, and I just said, look, you need to talk to this person, because once you talk to them, you'll understand. Yeah. On paper, they're okay, but once you actually see them as a whole, you'll realize they're that person that you're looking for.
Yeah. And I suppose it comes back to you have to have your list of non-negotiables.
Yeah.
That's a given. You know, if for whatever reason they must have this particular brand experience or, you know, engine reconditioning experience or whatever it is, there are some non-negotiables.
Yeah.
So you need to get that list first. But the key is to keep that list as small as possible. It is very easy for that list to get out bigger and bigger. And then suddenly you're looking for the golden goose that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So keep the list to an absolute minimum, because when you think about it, when we look back at what we said earlier about bad employees being like a cancer, you might see a guy, 10 years experience with your brand, done everything, ticks all the boxes. You think, great, this is the golden goose we've been looking for. They tick all the boxes. And you've got this huge list of non-negotiables that he's ticked everything. You interview them and you walk out of the interview and you go, I think he's got a bit of an attitude issue.
Yeah.
I don't think they're the right fit. But you've become so invested in your list of non-negotiables that you go against your better judgment and you say, well, we're never going to find it. We've tried for 12 months. He ticks all the boxes. We just have to put this guy on. He ticks all the boxes.
Yeah.
They start, sure as hell, bad attitude, doesn't work out, you know, annoys half the staff members there.
Yeah.
People start quitting, and that one person has suddenly left a huge detrimental effect on your business because you were so obsessed with that list of non-negotiables. So you have to keep that to a minimum and then really focus on attitude. Attitude is everything. An employee with, you know, 0 to limited experience with the right attitude can be trained up in 3 to 6 months and stick around for 5-10 years.
Yeah.
Versus the guy with all the attitude in the all the experience in the world.
Yeah. And even
and
if
horrible
they only stick around for a year or 2 years, they're going to give you a lot more, generally speaking, in that year or two. You're just going to get more out of them. They're just going to be more motivated. Plus, they're going to be quite thankful that you've given them the opportunity.
Yeah, and they'll partake more in meetings, and you know, they'll be invested. They'll be invested. The word.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're more likely to go that extra mile usually.
Yeah,
for sure.
And that leads us really nicely into our next point, and one that I know doing the research on, was quite a surprise, but not really at the same time. It's what does a loyal employee, quote unquote, look like on paper?
Yeah.
You know, we see it all the time. You submit candidates, they've moved around over the last, 10, 15 years, and then the feedback from a client is, oh, they've jumped around too much.
Yeah.
Which is a completely reasonable excuse, and there's definitely people that do jump around too much. There's no doubt about that. But it's really important that you understand what the average employee tenure is in 2020 versus what it was in 1980.
Yeah.
There was a time where it was really positive, and it was unless you did this, you were seen as a bad employer or a non-loyal employee. You know, you joined a company, you stuck around for 7 to 10 years and maybe 15 years and you never left and you were comfortable.
Yeah.
It's getting to the point now where people are seeing that as a negative. You know, they're too comfortable. There's no drive, no ambition.
That's right.
There's obviously, this is just generalizing. There's so many exceptions to the rule, but people nowadays, with everything that's changed in society, they want challenges. They want changes. They want to improve and continually move forward.
Yeah.
So the average employee tenure has just completely changed compared to what people would think ordinarily. And so I've got some statistics in front of me here, and this is actually from the Federal Department of Employment, which was a 2019 survey. So it's as relevant as we can get. But if you look at the age groups here, under 25, the average job tenure is 1 year and 8 months.
Yeah.
Being relatively young, I'm 27 now. Just had to think about that for a little bit, but so most of my friends are in that age bracket or slightly above, and I can attest to that most of them do stick around for that long.
Yeah, most people do about 1.5 to 2 years.
Yeah.
Which I think honestly just comes down to people wanting to experience things.
Exactly. You know, keep getting as much training into them as possible. Like I'm trying to set myself up for the future here.
Yeah. Plus you can, when you're in your mid to late 20s, you probably don't have a family yet.
Exactly.
You might do, but a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
You don't have commitments or anything like that. If you take a job that doesn't quite work out within the first couple of months, that's all right. You can find something else. You probably don't have kids to feed or anything like that.
Exactly.
So, a lot of that comes down to I just want to work in as many places as possible and gather as much experience as I can. And
if I'm not getting it from here, I need to get it from somewhere because I'm running out of time.
That's right. Yeah. I think that's the attitude. And I think that's where that comes from a lot of the time.
100%. And then so you probably, as you expect, you go to the age bracket of 25 to 35. and you're looking at 2 years and 8 months as the average tenure.
Yep.
35 to 44, you're looking at 4 years. 45 plus, you're looking at 6 years and 8 months. So I think that's a really good representation of a previous, I suppose, generation of employees and their mentalities, and that was to stick around and be loyal. And so they obviously far higher, almost 7 years. But the average across all the age groups, across all employees in Australia in 2019 survey was 3 years and 4 months.
Yep.
Which I'm sure for most people listening would be far lower than what they would ordinarily expect a loyal employee to look for ads.
That's right.
Or look like. We've had so many instances where candidates have had 3 jobs in 10 years. So you're looking, 2 stints of 3 years, 1 of 4 years.
Yeah.
And clients have gone, they jump around way too much. And we understand because we see resumes all day, every day. We're looking at 20 to 40 resumes a day. So we understand just subconsciously what an average resume looks like.
Yeah.
Whereas people that haven't recruited, in high volumes over the last 10 years, they haven't really seen these changes. So it's important to understand that 3 jobs in 10 years is
nothing,
exactly the average, if not slightly greater.
Yeah.
So it's probably 3.4 when you look at it.
That's right. Yeah. And I think we need to sort of revisit what loyalty looks like today in the workplace. As you said, I think, a couple of decades ago, you got a job and that's where you were for the next 10 to 15 years and you did your time with them and then you maybe moved on if there was some perfect opportunity that come around.
Yeah.
Today, that's not the case anymore. We've got way more jobs than we've got people.
Yeah.
Everyone's always looking for a new challenge. People are very keen on improving themselves all the time.
Yeah.
We've become very wary of staying stagnant. We want to keep moving and keep learning.
Yeah.
So I think to me, personally, I think a loyal employee isn't someone who sticks around for 10 years, but someone who speaks up.
Exactly right.
I think loyalty in itself, just staying somewhere for 10 years, to me, doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, you could sit there on your hands for 10 years and just do the
nothing.
bare minimum to get through because you're comfortable.
Yeah, that's right.
Versus, someone that sticks around for 3 years, but for that 3 year period, they are heavily invested.
Yeah.
Coming to every meeting with full of ideas, telling you everything, growing your business, improving it. That is so much more valuable to an organization.
I'll take someone who does that for 3 years over someone who does the bare minimum for 10 years any day. And then I have to replace them after 3 years. Okay, fine, whatever.
Yep.
But I know for in those 3 years, I've gotten a heap out of them.
Yeah, exactly. So I suppose the point we're trying to drive home is to just change the mentality around average tenure and really think beyond just, they've had 3 jobs in 10 years. They're only going to be here for 3.5 years. Have a real hard think about, well, what are we going to get out of them for those 3.5 years?
Yeah.
Is it going to be worthy to us? And of course, it doesn't mean they're going to definitely leave after 3.5 years.
No, that's right.
You could provide something that that I suppose goes into the retention debate or discussion about, how do you actually keep people engaged and happy? But I think, if you like a person and they're invested and they have the right attitude and the right fit, well, then it falls onto you about how we're going to retain this person beyond that 3 to 4 year tenure that we're now seeing as the average.
Yeah. And I always think try and move away from the school of thought of how many years are we going to get out of them, but rather than, how much positivity for the company are we going to get out of them?
Yeah.
How much can they move the business forward with us?
Yeah.
Instead of, all right, I just want them to be here and show up for the next 5 years. That's not, that doesn't mean anything if someone just shows up.
No.
So try and rethink value. Is it, really just, you just don't want to recruit for the next 5 years and that's it? Or do you really want someone who's going to give you everything for a couple of years?
Exactly right. And that probably ties us into another point. We were going to talk about it later, but I think it segues perfectly into the age discrimination discussion. We see it all the time, unfortunately, where you submit a candidate and you get the return back from the client that says, oh, they're just too old for the role. We think we only get 5 years out of them. Well, now that we've seen, if someone is, say, 60 and you think they're going to retire at 65 and it's not a physical job and they can do it well. Yeah. Well, if you do get 5 years out of them from 60 to 65, which is highly likely, as we've seen by the statistics, that their average tenure is far higher. Yeah. They're far less likely to want to move on because they're probably going to be 63, 64 by that time. Yeah. They're going to be worried, am I going to find a job? Yeah. So if they can give you 5 years from 60 to 65, well, that's a lot better than the average of a 30 to 40-year-old that we've now seen through the statistics. So that mentality of, they're only going to give us 5 years. Well, really understand the tenure average and then think, well, 5 years is really good.
Yeah.
I want 5 years from them. And it's almost a guaranteed 5 years if we're happy with them.
Correct.
So I've just looked through here, did a bit of research before today about the age pension, or the pension age, I should say, and how that has increased over the last few decades and how it's only going to increase more and more, and understanding how old people are going to have to be in the workforce. People, we see it all the time. We don't want people over 60. We're not going to get much out of them.
Yeah.
There's going to come a time where there is a huge portion of the workforce or people that need to work that are going to be over the age of 60 because the age pension age has gotten so high.
Yeah.
So you look through here, if your birth date was between 1954 and 1955, the age pension age is 66 years. And then it's gone up to 66 years and 6 months. Now, if you're born after 1957, it's up to 67 years. And there's all sorts of predictions and statistics out there that predict it's going to be above 70, not to, if you're born in the 80s or 90s, it's going to be above the 70 age. So, and it's only going to get older and older as life expectancies increase, et cetera. So, this mentality of, people are well past their prime at the age of 50 or 55. Well, as a society, we're going to have to change that massively because we're going to have a ginormous burden on our welfare system if we don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people born in the 90s and the early 2000s, which I know are still young, obviously, at this point, but they have a very, very high chance of hitting 100.
Yeah.
There's a much, at the moment still, if someone hits 100, it's like, wow, they've really lived a long time. But once those people born in the 90s and the early 2000s get to that age, there's going to be a much bigger proportion who will reach triple figures in their age years. And so as a just direct result, you're going to have to work longer. You're going to be alive longer. So I think that's one of the biggest issues going forward for the Australian employment market, realising that just because, this candidate's 65 doesn't mean they can't work for you.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're not going to get anything out of them. And I've talked to heaps of candidates who are above 60, and I think the general consensus is that, they just want to, get into another job that'll see them through to retirement, and I'm not going to get much out of them. They're never like that. I've never gotten that. They've always been super keen.
Yeah.
Probably even more so because they're probably thinking, I'm this is my age and I'm still keen.
Yeah, I've got all this knowledge that I want to impart onto people. I want to help a dealership increase revenue through all my knowledge and experience that I've had. It's an untapped portion of the market that if you can tap into, you will find better candidates because a lot of your competitors will not be doing it.
Yeah.
But I think the take-home message there once again is if you've ever caught yourself saying we're only going to get 5 to 7 years out of them, that is a great result.
That is great.
5 to 7 years is above the average
really
of 3 years and 4 months by a long way, and it is considerably higher than the average for a 25 to 35-year-old of 2 years and 8 months.
Yep.
So if you ever catch yourself, stop and think about that. And then finally, I suppose the big one that I'm sure you've got a lot of opinions on. If you haven't listened to our first episode where we introduced ourselves, Phil actually has, I'll let him describe his university tertiary background. But he has a heavy interest in psychometric assessments and the psychology of both people, but also in an employment capacity. But Phil, why don't you take over with this one and explain a little bit about your history and why you're so invested in this.
Yeah, so look, I did a psychology degree at the University of Queensland. I did a full honours degree, so I did a full thesis essentially throughout my 4-year degree. Psychometric assessment came up quite a lot throughout the degree. We actually, in one course, we came up with our very own psychometric assessment. The entire course basically pulled together. There's a lot that goes into these psychometric assessments to make these tools. It's very statistics heavy. It takes a lot of hours, let's put it this way. It's not difficult in the sense of you need to be a genius to do it, but it's very time intensive, and you need to put the hours in really. Look, with psychometric assessments, I think general society often looks at them as they just figure out what you're thinking. And then that's just, that's the result. We should take this for granted and that's, it's always true.
Yeah.
That's not really the case. Psychometric assessments measure whatever they're made to measure. It's just a guy or a girl on the other end who's come up with this question.
Yep.
And through various statistical means has figured out that this question is a better way of asking what they're trying to achieve than another question.
Yep.
That's all it really is. It's not, there's no magic behind it. It's statistics. That's what it is. Okay. So
You're not reading people's minds.
you're not, no. And no one has some sort of blueprint vision where they can, X-ray vision, where they can see through you.
Exactly. And I think that's why we wanted to talk about this in the context of finding the right candidate. We hear all the time from clients that, we're going to put them through our psychometric assessment and then we'll make our decision.
Correct.
And they use the psychometric assessment as a screening tool.
Yeah.
And I suppose the other side of that is, we've heard in multiple occasions where companies that have had psychometric assessments and they've employed people and they haven't worked out, they go, oh, well, psychometric assessments don't work at all.
Yeah.
We employ that person and, they were horrible.
Yeah.
So I suppose, what is your opinion of them as a screening tool or, where they fit in the recruitment process?
Yeah. So quite poor.
Yeah.
As a screening tool. You don't want to use it as a screening tool. So I did an entire course in organizational psychology just around how to make the perfect recruitment process.
Yep.
And we had people there who'd been organizational psychologists for 30, 40 years. And basically the message was psychometric assessment is your last tool that you want to use. Yep. It's where you've got two candidates and you can't pull them apart. You don't know you've got A and B and you're just torn. No one knows who to go for. That's when you employ a psychometric assessment and you have to make sure that that piece of psychometric assessment is valid to the job they're going to be doing.
Yes.
Don't just give them some generalist willy-nilly thing and, oh, look, they've done really well on numeracy or something, but they don't have to do any maths in their job. And that's, don't choose that person over the other person just because they've done well in the numeracy.
Has to be tailored.
Yeah, it has to be tailored to that specific role and that specific person.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, just use them as a supporting tool. You don't want to base your decision off that, mainly because it's obviously not very good. I don't think it's very accurate.
Yep.
You're not going to get good results. The other thing is you can potentially open yourself up to a whole lot of legal troubles if you do.
Yep.
A great example of this is, and I don't remember the company name, I believe it was an IT company in the US. They were going through a rough time. They had to go through mass redundancies essentially.
Yeah.
And so I think it was the board or the managers, the higher up managers all said, all right, look, what we'll do is we'll get some psychometric assessment done.
Yep.
And we'll get the entire company to do a psychometric test. And this is the profile we're looking for.
Yep.
Right? This is the sort of person we're looking for. And who the bottom 40% that don't fit that profile are going to get the sack.
Yep.
They all got fired
Yep.
as a result of one psychometric test. And they all sued the company and famously won.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that's something you really need to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Don't base your decision off psychometric assessment.
No. And I've definitely haven't studied at the level you have, but I have done a couple of courses in the past through a previous role that have talked about psychometric assessments and focused on them. And one thing they really harped on about, and it's good to get your opinion on this, is rather than use them as a screening tool to make your decision process of whether you're going to hire someone or not, they can be really valuable on learning how to manage that person because it shows particular personality traits.
Yeah.
So someone that doesn't perform what you, I suppose, envision as ideal on that test, it might just mean that, well, compared to what you thought you wanted,
Yeah.
they don't fit that bill, but they can be managed, a little bit more hands-on or a little bit more hands-off and get a better result based on their assessment results.
Yeah, that's right. And so that's where they really, really shine because you're able to get insight beyond what you've already found out about them, beyond their skills and beyond your chats with them and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So
are they a self-starter?
Yeah.
Are they, do they need day-to-day management?
That's right. That's right. And how do they work best? Some people work best by just going in, sitting down with their manager and saying, this is what I'm going to do today.
Yep.
And then coming back at the end of the day and saying, this is what I've done.
Yep.
Then there's others who just don't need that. They don't want that. They're better off just doing everything by themselves, check in once a week.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, So then there's others who will perform really, really well if they feel like they're being watched because they feel like, I'm on a stage here, I need to perform. So these are the things you can find out from psychometric tests.
Yep.
But again, they're not things you should base your decision off. at all, really.
Yeah. It's last part of the puzzle.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. One tool of psychometric assessment that I think a lot of people probably don't look at necessarily as being psychometric test. I think a lot of people see it as, you do a questionnaire and then that's pretty much it, is assessment centers.
Yep.
So I know you've created one of those before.
Yep.
They're the best thing you can do. Essentially, it's rather than just your traditional interview, assessment centers is when you essentially get a few candidates to come in and you give them tasks to do that they would be doing essentially in their day-to-day in this job.
Yep.
So it gives you a good idea of how would they actually perform. You know, say you were doing it for someone who's going to be a recruiter. That's not too hard to do. You give them a phone and say, call this number and sort of interview this person.
Yep.
And evaluate them on how they interview that person.
Yeah.
That's where psychometric assessment really shines, because assessment centers are by far the most effective tool. You'll get a good idea of their personality. You can, often it's a day. It's quite time intensive.
Yeah.
That's the main negative, really. You're going to have to spend most of the day really doing these.
Yep.
But generally speaking, you'll get really, really good results.
Yeah. And I suppose a really good working example I just thought of then, based on what we did a couple of years ago for recruitment, but you could spin that in parts interpreting or service advising could be a good example, is you have these people, you can't split them. There might be 3 of them. Let's say parts interpreters. You try and figure out how are we going to split these guys.
Yep.
Well, set them up in 3 different scenarios. A traditionally easy client to deal with, a really aggressive, difficult client to deal with, and then maybe a difficult client in the sense that they just don't understand what they're trying to tell you, and then they've got to pull that information out of them as a parts interpreter, and have people within your business playing these characters on the other end of the phone.
Yeah.
And you can assess them firsthand. Well, hopefully everyone does well with the easy client. That's just about showing face and being polite and nice and following procedures, but how they're going to actually act under pressure with a difficult client, and see how they react without training, everything else, because that's their gut instinct. That's how they're going to perform later down the track.
Yeah.
And that's a really effective tool. And I know we used it at an old company, and it worked really well.
Yeah.
It was quite evident really quickly who was going to survive and who was going to struggle.
Yeah, that's right.
Because you saw them in the deep end.
Yeah, and don't just sit there and go, all right, say you've got a difficult client on the phone, this is what they say, what do? Give them the phone and make one of your employees play the difficult client, which is quite fun. They'll love it. Trust me, they will love it.
Breaks up the monotony of the day.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of the people who do those interviews, who go through those assessment centers, generally find them quite valuable.
Yeah.
I've been to one, and I remember everyone who walked out was like, even if I don't get the job, that was a cool experience. That was quite nice to just get to and get to do, and experience that. Leaves
a good taste in their mouth as well, and
they're
likely to reapply for a job in the future with you if they've had a good experience.
Yeah, and how, even if you don't get the job, how valuable do you feel just walking away thinking, all right, they've spent 8 hours with me.
Yeah.
So obviously, they do care. It's just going to be about competition.
Yeah, exactly right. So you obviously can't do that with every role, but if you've got a high volume of people that you're trying to narrow it down to, and it's an important role, then invite them in and do a group situation and really try and figure that out. It's far more effective than just giving them a psychometric assessment and looking at that and going, well, they don't fit what we would like, so they're out.
Yeah,
that's the take home there. But gone a bit longer than we ordinarily would, but as we said, there was going to always be a lot of room for discussion in there. There's probably plenty that we've missed, but if you are listening and you do have any thoughts on those topics, please shoot them through. There'll be links in the show notes below. But good to talk to you, Phil, and we'll be back again in another week's time for a new episode.
Talk to you again soon.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Adding Fuel to the Hire. If you have any questions or you'd like to hear us talk about a particular topic, why not send us an email at podcast@addingfueltothehire.com. If you like what we do and would like to support our podcast, please leave a review on your podcasting app of choice. For further information, please visit our website, addingfueltothehire.com.